hope that wasn't live.
All right, everyone. Welcome to another week of Stories of a Colorful World Author Conversations. Today, we are here with author Greg Burnham, and we're still in our conversations about family dynamics, families. So looking at books that focus on relationships. So, Greg, welcome to Stories of a Colorful World.
Thank you for having me. I think this is amazing what you're doing, and I'm just going to say thank you a lot.
Absolutely, thank you. So can you just start off by telling us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Greg Burnham. I'm an author and a writer and an editor, a self-publisher. What else do I do? All kinds of stuff. I do comic books and children's books. And I've been writing, I guess, professionally for about 7 years now. Wow. But in love with writing since I was a kid, like writing and reading. So, yeah, I'm a father. I have 2 children, but they're like adults now. So that I don't know if you're still supposed to call them children. They're my kids.
They're still children.
Yeah. They're my babies. Daughter's in her senior year in college. She was awesome, even though she left me, and it hurts sometimes. But she did say she was coming home this weekend, so I'm excited about that.
That's awesome.
And so I guess I can pull up. I got the children's books, and we're going to talk about Grandpa's Shoes today. I'm so bad at this. And then Broken Glass is another book that I have. And then I also do a comic book called Tuskegee Heirs. This is the latest issue 4, with my business partner and co-creator, Marcus Williams. And then The Search for Sadaka is another comic that I have.
Absolutely. So what inspired you? Said you started writing about 7 years ago professionally. Mm-hmm. So what inspired you to be a writer?
Oh man, I just was in love with it I always had to tell the story, which dates myself, but when I was like in the 2nd grade, I was living in Idaho, and we weren't really close to any movie theaters. So when The Empire Strikes Back came out, I had bought the novel at the little school book fair, and they were all like, this book is too big for you, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, whatever. So I bought it, and I remember having a dictionary with me, and I would, like, whenever I would come across words that I didn't know, I would just read them. I would look them up in the dictionary, and I fell in love with it, like how you can describe things and you can paint these pictures without people ever, seeing, but so that was the beginning. I think when I was in the 5th grade, I wrote this long story. I think I was like, whatever reason, I had to stay in the house. I probably got in trouble for something. So like a whole weekend, I wrote this really long story. And I thought it was great at the time. And it was like the best feeling in the world. Now I realize that it was like I just did Black Star Wars. But at the time, it was just like, it just felt really good to like, write this stuff out and, put your own thoughts on paper. So that's where it started. Fast forward to like my kids, when they were younger, I would tell them these stories because Broken Glass and Grandpa's Shoes are loosely based off of things that happened to me when I was a kid. Okay. Broken Glass more tight, than Grandpa's Shoes. But my daughter would always be like, you need to make these books. Sounds good to me. So, we just made, printed out, put together the books and printed them out. And been going good ever since.
So we owe your daughter a world of thanks.
Yeah,
for
yeah,
you
yeah,
for you putting this out into the world.
yeah. It's all her.
So it kind of feels like right now we're losing kind of like that tradition of like oral storytelling where um that we once had. So like where the elders would sit and talk about, the things that happened in the past, and how it then connects to where we are right now. So it's
Mhm.
like when I read Grandpa's Shoes, I could understand the main character where she's like, "Oh, this is my grandfather. He just sits in the chair and watches
Right.
news and listens to the blues." And not until really connecting with like discovering those old pictures that she really gets a sense of, oh, he has a richness like in his history, like all of these things. So what kind of inspired you to write that?
Man, it's a lesson that I learned. The funny thing, my grandfather, who is no longer here, and I'm not gonna say I had the greatest relationship with him, but I had like some really good mentors. And one time we were up there in Kansas City. My family's from Missouri, and I'll never forget. I think he was tired. He had come from work or something. He was really tired, and he was like flipping the channels on the remote. But I don't think I think he thought he was hitting the like the channel up button, but he was really hitting the
Mm,
flashback button. So it kept just going between
back and forth.
two channels, and so we're sitting here like he doesn't know, but we're sitting here cracking up laughing at him, you know. And he was, I mean, he wasn't like senile or anything like that.
Right, right.
So I wouldn't say we were horrible people, but we're just laughing like, oh, he doesn't know what he's doing. And then one of my mentors, who really helped me change my direction in life, because at that time I think I was probably like 18.
Okay.
He was like saying how you should respect this man, because I guarantee you he's been through a lot. My grandfather was raised in Tennessee and had to grow up in a very, very small town, and was the oldest, so he was always taking care of everybody, because his father, stuff happened to his father when he was young. So it just really, he told me that day really succinctly, and it wasn't the first time I heard it, but it was the first time it really resonated with me. And he said, "Don't judge a man without, you should never judge a man without walking in his shoes. Like you don't even understand." And so that helped, that one little talk, really helped me to see things a little bit different. And I knew some of the stuff, about my grandfather already. We were driving through Tennessee one time, and uh, he tried to like pull over on the side of the road and show us how to pick cotton, because he, when he was little, he had to pick cotton. He was, of course, not a slave, but
Right.
sharecropping, and just so I knew some of this stuff about him. I knew he was in the military. I knew he was in the war. But it prompted me to really kind of dig deeper and find out who this man was. And so that, coupled with the fact, like if you see in the book, there's a little scene in Japan. When my mother was little, she lived in Japan.
Mm.
My son, for some reason, I think he believes that he's Japanese. And so like he's super duper into anime. I think when he was like 7 years old, I told him, that my mom lived in Japan, and he lost his mind. And he's like, "Can I call her?" I was like, "Sure." And he stayed on the phone for like an hour. And I just felt like, those are the things we're sitting here with our, these people who preceded us and have been through so many things. And how often do we just sit down?
Right.
And I remember like when I used to do it with my grandmother, how excited and happy she would be. And she used to tell me all these things about, all these things that, about blackness, and about, stuff that made me love myself that I never heard before. And so I'm like, if I can just prompt even a small part of the population to actually dig in and, you know, spend that time with your people, because you're not going to have them. Mine aren't here. Like all my grandparents are gone. And like, I'm still finding out stuff, you know,
Right.
but yeah, it's just, if we could just get some people into that, because I think it's a powerful thing.
Because we're losing so much history and so much that
Right.
we could be bringing into this world, and like the power that our kids or our grandkids could have from knowing, you know, all that,
Right.
you know, we've been through or our family has been through without it being sanitized.
Right. Yeah. I found out, it was at my grandmother's funeral. I found out that she got arrested for a sit-in when she was young, and she never told me that. And I was like, now, why didn't you tell me that? But
Right.
she also knew that I was the rambunctious one. So she probably didn't want
She
to,
didn't want you to be the
yeah.
rebellion.
Because then I'll be like, well, grandma did it. So, you know, so I think, you know, and she always talked to me like, my grandmother was the one that, like, you think about the climate that we're in right now with police brutality and all of that. My grandmother's the one that had those talks with me, you know, on the phone, telling me how to conduct myself. Unfortunately, we have to have those talks, right? How to conduct if you get stopped, if you get pulled over. So, yeah, just a wealth of knowledge that we just kind of let, you know, fall by the wayside.
Right. Which is sad. And hopefully we'll start to have those conversations again,
Yeah,
particularly now in the wake of, you know,
yeah, yeah.
because it's so important.
Mhm.
So what do you want kids to kind of like get out of your, like particularly your children's books? What do you want them to get out of it?
Well, they're based. So, grandpa shoes. Of course, there's the part about. I think we just talked about, like, first of all, looking at people and seeing that person, seeing them as a human. Like, we're brought up. Like, kids are the most narcissistic. By, you know, you have to be, right, because you're
Right.
born and everything is about me trying to figure out how to make this whole existence work for myself. And, you know, I had parents that kind of drove home those facts that you're not the only person in the world, you know, that kind of stuff. So this is, you know, part of it is to look at, you know, to see people and understand that that person has a life just like you. And when you're not with them, that doesn't mean that they're in a closet somewhere waiting to see you again, right?
Absolutely.
There's adults that need to know that today. But so that part about not judging, but then also the part about, you know, spending time and, you know, learning, you know, from your ancestors. Spend time, you never know what you'll find. um then, like, with broken glass, that one is more about, you know, honesty. um
Mm.
the short of it is, a kid breaks a window. He goes into his brain and he starts you know, like, weighing the pros and cons, like, should I be honest or should I try to hide this and cover it up? And you know, he starts thinking of all the, you know, the bad things that'll happen if his parents find out. Then he's like, well, I could just hide it. Then he starts thinking of the good things. But his imagination kind of takes over and it scares him. I was living in Idaho when that happened too, and I really did. I broke the window playing baseball. The thing is, I didn't tell anybody, and I had this crazy imagination. And we're like in the middle of the desert, so I see, you know, wolves, coyotes, whatever, like snakes, all kinds of stuff. So I'm sitting here with a broken window, and nobody knows about it. And I'm like, oh man, what if a snake
Well,
jumps through
right.
my window? Yeah, because I was only like 6, you know. So, but it's really set to teach. You know, it's kind of like we call it the Jedi mind trick, where, you know, you're showing kids that the better way to go is to be honest and upfront. And it mitigates, like it lessens your the type of punishment that you may get, you know. So, you know, honesty. And the crazy thing about that is you're telling these, you know, I'm telling these stories from, you know, my own experience, but I've had like psychologists and people that, you know, that deal with kids that are like, oh no, I keep a copy of Broken Glass,
Right.
you know, in my office, and
Absolutely.
and use it for like a teaching mechanism. So not only is it entertaining, because um and that's the other thing, you can't control when you create something, you can't control what happens with it, right? Once you get it out to the world. But I've had, you know, kids that are like in high school that'll, you know, they might, you know, walk past our table at a comic convention and be like, oh my God, that's Broken Glass. I had that book when I was a kid, you know, and I used to read it. And I have parents that are like, oh man, I have to read this book every single night, you know. And I'm like, well, just think, you know, it's not just entertainment, but they're actually,
Right.
you know, gaining something from it. So
I need that one for my son.
I used, I used to
I
tell
feel
it,
like that's a lesson that I'm always like, okay, what should you do?
and it's something that I taught my kids, and I'll be honest, like especially my son. When I tell you, this dude he's 23, and he's so honest with me all the time. You know, if I ever, hey, did blah 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 such and such, yeah, yeah, you know, he's honest because he realizes. So I think it works some.
Absolutely. So you have written both children's books and comics. Do you have a preference?
Um, the thing about comics is you can tell like a more robust
Mm.
story. You know, you can really dig in deep and get into the minutia. Um, one of the things I like about children's books is you can make the book, like Broken Glass is like 7 years old. It sounds crazy, but it's like 7 years old. I still sell it. You know, it's like you make it one time and it just sells. Comic books, you can put your heart and soul into a book and you can make it great. And then people are going to read it in like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then they're going to be like, okay, when's the next one coming up?
Mm.
So it's like they both have positives and they both have negatives. Um, I, as somebody who, you know, who is a writer, I think comic books are a little bit cooler because, like I said, you can put more into it. But I'm working on another children's book now, so.
Okay. So because we're in this space where we kind of talked about offline before, just in terms of um, putting more books out there or getting more recognition for books that feature diverse characters, Black and brown characters, um, and by authors of color. You know, what does diverse representation mean to you?
Everything. Um, I grew up, I'm a big sci-fi, you know, I guess I don't think I'm a nerd, but I fit in that nerd space, you know. And I remember like Star Wars and, you know, wanting to be a character in Star Wars, but in the first movie they didn't have one. They didn't have any black people, so you have to fit into something that you're not. Um, it's huge when you can see, you know, characters that are centered in blackness, and you know you can be excited and be like proud to say, "Ooh, I'm this guy or that guy." So we see it like with Tuskegee Airs. We have 5 teenage pilots, all black, and they're super duper capable. And we see like kids come dressed up as our characters to comic conventions. We
Wow.
see adults we have a lady that's like 64, 65 years old, and she made her costume from scratch, and it's amazing.
Wow.
So, you know, we just see how it benefits. Like the search for Sadaka, that one was actually that was going to be my first novel, but I'm writing it and I'm like seeing all this success we're having with the comic books, and I'm like, nah, I got to do this as a comic. I need her to have a cool outfit, and I need little girls to see this and be like, oh, okay, she's a different kind of hero. So yeah, representation is everything. I personally, and we've seen it because all kinds of people buy our comics. It's not just Black people, but it's centered in Blackness, and we're able, because we don't have because we're self-published, we don't have anybody standing behind us telling us how Black people should talk and how Black people should think. So we get to do it ourselves. So it's really authentic and it's huge.
How has your journey kind of been across your career?
From the writing standpoint, it's been great, man. We, I started with those children's books, and then Tuskegee Airs, it went viral. When we created that one, we ended up doing a Kickstarter for it. We raised a lot of money. We weren't trying to, but it ended up raising tons of money. And that helped us to be able to really set ourselves up as like a real publisher kind of thing. So we do tons of comic conventions. We do we've done as many as like 34 conventions in a year, but we usually always do at least 25. So yeah, it's been really good and well received. And it is that thing, man. It's just like when you get that, you see directly how you're impacting people. Because that's what we set out to do. Marcus Williams is my co-creator and my business partner, and he's a phenomenal illustrator. And we could easily do stories like when I did Broken Glass. I had some, people, reading it, and they were like, "Oh, this is awesome. Like, have you thought about making this kid like a tiger or a bear or something? Because then you could get the universal worldwide appeal, and blah blah blah." And I was like, "Yeah, no, it's a Black kid. It's a little Black boy." Right. Yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying, you don't want to limit your. It's a Black. And when we started that, it wasn't popular.
Right.
But now it's kind of moved into. I'm not saying we made it popular, but now it's moved into a space where it is more popular and it's easier to do. So yeah, it's been great.
That's amazing.
Except for stinky, raggedy COVID. COVID is horrible. It ruined my year, but it ruined everybody's year. So absolutely. I'm not alone.
Do you find yourself being more creative during this time?
Honestly, I won't say more creative. I'm able to focus more. Before, it's like basically you're living at home 3 days a week, right? So like, because usually the Monday after a convention, you're exhausted to the world. And so you got Tuesday, Wednesday, and then sometimes you're flying out on Thursday or you're flying out on Friday. So it's like now I've been able to like focus and have more time to, like let things breathe in my brain. So it's cool in that sense. But, we travel so much. We're like work on stuff, on the plane, work on stuff in the hotel. We're not like on any kind of rock star level. So right. We gotta like, and what I mean by that is we don't like, we go to these, we go to all these cities. We're not there to like party and do all that.
Right.
Kind of stuff. We're adults and we're business people. So we're going to sleep. Make sure you get their requisite amount of sleep, because you're going to be talking to thousands of people each day, you know? So
people don't realize how exhausting that is.
And people, like, we do, I would say for like independent comic creators, we do a lot of shows, and we go to places, and people sometimes they'll think that we're being antisocial or something, but it's like, no, this is like I said, it's like a tour. It's like, you know, all that stuff is cool, you know, to hang out and all of that. And sometimes we'll go to dinner or stuff like that, but it's hard as far as like staying out till 2 and 3 in the morning and then having to try to wake up. Like if you miss the first 2 hours of New York Comic Con, like in a day, that could be anywhere from like, you know, $300-400 to $1,000 you miss out on. So,
wow.
Yeah,
it's serious.
Yeah, it's real. My friends be like, "Oh, you be going all around." I said, "That's fun." I be like, "Man, I like." If you ever have woken up and don't know what city you're in, you have to like remind yourself, I think I'm in Chicago. And then you have to look out the window. Yeah, this is Chicago. Yeah.
I used to have to travel for work, so I understand. And people think that it's like, oh, you're traveling everywhere. No, it's not as glamorous as it seems.
We're flying out of Atlanta, Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. You tell me that's fun, then I'm going to have you drug tested, because
Absolutely. Do you have any advice for aspiring writers?
Write complete projects. There's so much knowledge that you get. There certain things you can't really learn until, you know, you complete a project. Be malleable. And when I say that, I mean, excuse me, and I say this to people all the time, as a creative person, we tend to come up with ideas and then we automatically think, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. Oh, the world's gonna go crazy over this. I'm working on a comic right now with one of my friends, and he's gonna be like, oh man, it's over. Once we get this, it's gonna be. And I'm like, hey man, there's a ton of work that goes into, you know, to creating stuff. You also have to be able to look, like, I'm always on the it's not you, it's me train. So if people aren't responding well to something that I create, I'm gonna look to try to figure out if there's something that I could have done better.
Right.
Instead of saying, oh, this isn't my crowd of people or whatever. I'm always gonna, be evaluating myself. So that, and like I said, sometimes you can feel like it can get a little discouraging, but if you really want to do it and you really want to see, you got to do it. I always think about The Alchemist, which have you read The Alchemist?
Mm-hmm.
One of the best things I ever read. I have it now, like I got the audio. Sometimes I just play it at night, even though I know I'm gonna be sleepy. But Paulo Coelho, I probably said his name wrong. He created that book a long time ago, and even the publisher that he was working for or whatever, working with, they didn't really like the book that much. And he had another book that they liked, and they pushed that one harder. And I believe that I think it was Bill Clinton got off a plane one day and had that book in his hand. They snapped a picture of it, of him, and then everybody's like, "What's Bill Clinton reading?" And then I think Will Smith read it and said something about it, and then it exploded. And I just think that book has been awesome the whole time, because I'm pretty sure he didn't go back and like, oh, let me spruce it up a little. No, that book was awesome when he created it, but it didn't get the right visibility, and so that's part of your process when you create these. We're not in that age anymore, unless you sign with like a major publisher, where you can create a book and then just kind of sit back and watch the money pile up. we're in an age where you have to create it, you have to promote it, you have to make it visible. The cool part about it is we have the internet, which can aid you. So yeah, don't stop and try as much as you can to learn like the business side of whatever you're trying to do, because that's a huge part as well.
Awesome. Are you currently reading any good books?
I read a lot of nonfiction.
Okay.
Right now I'm reading this book right here on tyranny. It's a very small book. It's very small. Look at that. It's not even that big.
Oh my
but
goodness.
It's like everything I read, like every time I read like a chapter of it, I have to like stop and process and really soak it up. It's a very impactful book. And it's helping me to be able to process and understand the time that we're in.
Okay.
Sometimes you understand what's happening. The way our president has weaponized, racism and taking advantage of ignorant people's fanaticism. So you understand it, but then like sometimes it's just good to have like a manual that's like breaking it down step by step so you can understand where we are and where we're headed as a country and as people.
Right. Hopefully, people also see the power, like looking back and seeing like the power of people to be able to make change.
Yeah. And that this does it. It does. Like I wish everybody could read it. Just like I wish everybody could read The Art of War. Certain books that can really help you to see things a little bit more clearly.
Absolutely. All right, and let us know again about your current projects that you're working on.
Okay, so the Search for Sadaka is a comic. It's about a young lady. She's 13 years old. She's actually going to flee Tulsa, Oklahoma after the 1921 Black Wall Street race riot. And she's going to head west to find like a mythological, group of people that she thinks she belongs to. So it's kind of a coming of age story. The young lady, she goes from being kind of a little know-it-all kind of kid to actually, humbling herself and becoming like this great hero. I'm actually doing a Kickstarter for it. I think I put the Kickstarter link in there. Actually doing a Kickstarter for it right now. If you're not familiar with Kickstarter, it's a crowd fundraising thing. The last time I looked, we were up over $8,000. My goal was $3,600. We whizzed through that like in 5 hours. And so now we're trying to do our first stretch goal, which is to get 2 more side stories made in addition to the next issue of this. And then Tuskegee Airs. This is issue 4 that was recently released. It's a futuristic sci-fi. It takes place 80 years from now. You have 5 team pilots that are learning to fly at a time when man piloting is illegal. They're learning to fly in the P-51s. What's wrong with me? P-51s that the Tuskegee Airmen actually flew. But when everything gets upgraded, they'll get hold of some really cool jets. I was trying to find it. Some really cool jets that will turn into robots.
Ooh.
Robots.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, so I can put that link in if anybody's interested. Put that website in.
So we want to make sure that we support and getting you to that stretch goal.
Oh yeah. So the cool thing is because it's like you have to plan some of this stuff out ahead of time. So this stretch goal it's basically two short stories that are being comic book form, but it'll kind of bridge some of the gaps between the issues.
Gotcha.
Um, so it's really cool. With comics, it's just like a movie or anything else. It's like you always end up running out of space, you know. So I was like, I can, tell these little short stories and kind of like, get you, so people will be like, well, how did she get here? How did they get there? I'll explain that. So yeah, and like I said, we're going really well. We hit the goal really quickly. Usually there's a lull with Kickstarter, like after the first few days, and then it picks up like over the last week or so. But we're just, it's steadily climbing. We're steadily getting towards that goal. My next stretch goal is awesome. And it's like I want to be able to show that one to people. So I got to hurry up and get to this 10,000.
Well, we definitely wish you luck, and we want to support in any way. How can people get in touch with you?
So I'm on Instagram. Should I put all of that in there?
Yep, go ahead and put your Instagram.
What is it? Good question. And then Twitter is, what's that one? You don't know. Add that. And then if you're on Facebook, you can send me a request on Facebook. Excuse me. I also have Tuskegee Airs and the Search for Sautica on IG and yeah, and then on Facebook as well. So, and those are mostly the best ways to get in touch with me.
Awesome. So anything else you want to share with the people?
I just want to thank you for creating this platform. Like it's ironic. Like if you look on the children's books, I have say a little tag that says a Read With Me book. And I actually started a nonprofit called Read With Me Incorporated, and it's created to be able to get like books like these and others, not just my stuff, in the hands of at risk youth. We'll be doing some like book clubs with schools. I already have a couple of schools that are lined up.
Awesome.
So we're going to be moving in and starting to get that going this fall. But yeah, just what you're doing, it means so much. Understanding that these stories need to be amplified is huge. And I just thank you for allowing me to come on, and thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you so much. I think it's definitely important to get your voice and voices like yours out there. So thank you as well for coming on. And I really appreciate being able to share this platform with you and with the world.
Awesome.
So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and we will be back next week with another author's conversation. So thank you so much.